Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Reasonable Doubt. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan. Our show is sponsored by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. As always, I got my co-host right across from me, Julio Vela.
Jimmy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Wonderful. See, I just wanted to roll that beautiful music one more time.
You needed it
because we have a very special guest
That's
today.
That's right.
Who is it?
Very
back.
Who is it?
Brought it back.
Is it this guy?
No.
This guy.
It's the one, the only, Mr. Damon Parrish.
Back for more?
Making his return.
Right. The prodigal son returns.
His return.
Yeah.
Good to have you back, man.
It's fun to be back, man.
Now you're sitting like right next to me.
I know, it's weird. I sat over there with my usual seat. Mark's like, get up, you're not the host. No, all right. That's how it is. It's how it is, you know? What are you going to do?
No, look. In all reality, Damon, it's great to have you back.
It's good to be back, man. Thanks for the invite.
Wonderful.
It's great. We also got Ike Okorafor here, and we got Trinidad Zamora joining us. So we got a full house, ladies and gentlemen, a full house of 5 people sitting at this little table. So we're going to pack a lot in tonight. We got some great topics to get to, some really interesting stuff. We're going to talk about the resignation of Houston Police Department Chief Charles McClellan. We're also going to talk about the new protocol with DNA mixture samples and how that is causing a huge review here in Harris County on cases. We're going to talk about the record number of exonerations in 2015, and we're also going to talk about the lobbying power of private prisons. But as always, we're going to take your phone calls starting around 8:30. 713-807-1794 is the number. We'll put it up at the bottom of the screen starting at 8:30, and we'll also be taking your questions and comments right here live on the air on Twitter. Hit us up at HCCLA_TV. Whatever questions, comments you have for Damon, Ike, Trinidad, Julio, or myself, throw them out here. That's what we're here for. We'd love to answer it, get some great opinions, some great conversation going. And guys, the first one I want to get to, Charles McClellan, Houston Police Department Chief, resigns this week. I don't see it as being much of a big deal. It's kind of expected. We have a new mayor, but is this really an opportunity for this new mayor and this police department to kind of reset itself?
Well, where do you, why did he retire? Was it political? And how are they going to pick a new police chief? And what, at least from our perspective or from y'all's perspective, what is a police chief for one of the largest counties in the country? What are some goals or things that they should strive for? What do you think?
Well, JV, you can answer your questions kind of in reverse. So why did he retire? Who's going to be the new police chief? Well, Sylvester has a new police chief. You don't know who he is, and I don't, but you know he does. McClellan retired because there's a new sheriff or police chief in town. So new mayor, new boss, new police chief. So he retired because there's somebody else coming in to take over. What's the role of the police chief? It is to police, to lead our police force into the justice they're supposed to do. Do I believe that there'll be a resetting, Jimmy, a change? Of course not. We get a new mayor every 4 to 8 years, and we get the same old nonsense with the police force. So why would there be any difference?
I understand that, but is this, and completely agree that there is that possibility that it's going to be business as usual, but should the mayor and whoever he appoints view this as kind of an opportunity to kind of reset the tone on community relations with the police? Maybe just to set a different tone than what's been going on?
I would say so, because if they bring a police chief from outside of HPD, I think we could have some change, because currently the current police chief was with HPD for 30 years, 1977, something like that. But if you bring somebody in from a different city that had different initiatives, then maybe you can see some change. But when you hire from internally, they're part of the old same culture. So we need somebody from a different city, different culture, and maybe we can see some change, but that probably won't happen.
What do you think, Z?
Well, the way I look at it, I was a major in TDCJ, and when I would arrive to a new facility, because I was on 3 different facilities assigned to it, I was the new police chief. And when that occurred, I always brought integrity rather than loyalty to the situation. And with the badge, I understand that, there is tremendous loyalty, and there's a lot of good people that do wear the badge. However, that loyalty, the old brotherhood, or good old boy system, it is established, and those things need to be scrutinized. And I think a new police chief, with what we're facing today, I guess what I'm trying to say is that with a new police chief, they'll have new eyes on the systems to rid those old loyalties and get them out of the way. So, go ahead. I'm sorry. So a new police chief would be good for the city right now at this time.
I think it'd be a good idea. I think it'd be great to have something radical. Let's get Michael Morton to be a police chief.
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
get Anthony Graves.
Right.
Like, those guys can serve. They got no criminal records. They were expunged. Like, it'd be different. They have obviously no law enforcement experience.
Sure.
But if you really want to reset the way we perceive law enforcement, right? What better way than go totally different and get somebody victimized by law enforcement to come in and set a completely different tone? I mean, when you talk to Anthony Graves and Michael Morton, they're not anti-law enforcement. They want bad guys to be caught like everybody else. They just don't want the innocent guys to get swept up in the process. Yeah. So I think it'd be great to have somebody like Michael Morton and Anthony Graves do it. It won't never happen, but that'd be something radical.
Now, McClellan, of course, was an African-American. Our new mayor is African-American. Do you guys predict that he's going to appoint another African-American chief? Do you think he's going to perhaps stay with a minority chief? Do you think he would go with a female chief?
I think it's about time there's Mexican being a police chief. No.
I'm with
We had Agent Garcia for a little time.
Right. So let me ask you this though. Two things that on his retirement kind of press release or such, he said two of the things he really wanted to do was improve the relations with the community, and two, use technology in the police force. So I pose it to the panel. Do you think community relations are better than before he took office? And two, do you think he's successfully implemented technology, and whether that's good or bad, into the use of his police force?
If I could go first, I'd say no to both those questions. I would say, starting with the last question, the only reason technology entered the police force was because of external factors around the nation. We know we had a lot of police shootings of people allegedly running away, allegedly pulling guns, and that's why we got the grant to purchase the body cameras. That wasn't because of any initiative of the police chief. So you take that away from him, and then you have the police relations. I don't think that any people in the community feel better about calling the police or seeing the police in their neighborhoods. So I would think that he didn't achieve his two goals.
I never really saw him as much of a community relations guy. I mean, he's kind of a mercurial guy, McClellan. I mean, he didn't have this gregarious personality. He wasn't out there really interacting. You never saw him interacting with the public, other than when he ran over somebody in the sidewalk. But he wasn't that type of personality. You never saw him out at a lot of community events. I mean, you see the sheriff, any of them, Garcia, Hickman, the sheriff and the constables are more visible than the police chief. And so, I mean, I kind of feel like, I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on this, but it seems to me that the new police chief needs to be somebody with some personality, given the animosity with the police department.
Well, I'm going to answer JV's question, JV, and I actually think you guys are incorrect. If you need to define what it means to have technology and to be a part of the community, because I think McClellan was very successful in both of those. One, technology. We think technology, and by the way, of body cams. But as this show in previous episodes, look on YouTube to see, they use Stingray. They use all types of technology to catch us do bad things. Now, they use no technology to catch them or to monitor them or to ensure a proper defense or trial. But to catch us, oh, no. They're very hype on technology. And on the second one, as far as community relationships, we would like that defined as working with the community, correct? But as far as their definition, they have their mobile units everywhere. So they're in the community. They are policing the communities they want to police, and so they are successful in that venture as well. I think, JV, to answer your question, what would be better would be to define what is community relations. Is your job to police us or protect us? Is your job to work with the community? And under that definition, no, they will not be successful, but the next guy should be. When we say technology, are we talking a full integration of technology to where you can both catch the bad guys and we can monitor those who catch the bad guys as well? Body cameras, MDT records, and all that kind of good stuff. Or are we just talking surplus military technology used to catch bad guys with these tanks and these stingray devices and cell phone capture devices and all that kind of stuff.
And for any viewers out there, any defense lawyers that are watching, and anybody on the panel, the MDTs now, the mobile data transmissions, supposedly are being provided in a different format that prohibit the defense lawyers from finding out the latitude, longitude, and speed of the actual vehicle. Now, this may be another way that the HPD is prohibiting people accused of crimes from fighting their case, or it could be another quote-unquote successful implementation of useful technology on HPD's office, which I don't know. And if you're out there, if you've received any new MDTs, please call in and share with that, because I think that would contribute to this discussion.
I have. And what used to be voluminous is now just 2 pages. You used to get a lot of information from an MDT, a lot, and you don't.
How was the new mayor picked? The new sheriff, HPD chief of police picked? Is it an appointment process? Do you know? Because I think McClellan was appointed by Parker.
The mayor's going to appoint somebody. I mean, that's the $1 million question here: is who does he appoint, and what type of personality are we going to get? Because like I said, I just feel like this job, you're the 4th largest city in America. You need somebody who has a little more snap to it. And I wasn't really impressed with the snap of our last one. I got to be honest. Got to be honest about it.
I agree.
Let's switch topics here. We'll watch how. I'm sure we'll have another conversation when we actually get a chief appointed, and it'll give us some more fodder to talk about on this show.
Before we go on, I'd like to officially.
You catch me in mid-break. Huh?
I know. I'd like to officially announce my candidacy for the new HPD police chief. All right, just putting it out there.
My vote.
All right.
You're soliciting the appointment?
I'm soliciting the
I'm
appointment.
not sure that our broadcast rules allow you to solicit.
I am not soliciting the appointment. I'm just putting it out.
Fate's obliged.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to cut that portion of the table off for a little bit.
Thanks, Obama.
Big story this week, guys, talking about that Texas is leading the charge here in DNA review. And this is separate and apart from the exoneration story we'll talk about. But there's been a change in the way the DNA database is that the odds that your DNA sample is calculated now. And really what this is doing is talking about what they call mixture cases, where you have multiple DNA profiles at a scene that are all mixed together. And there's a new standard, a new protocol for how they calculate that. And it drops the percentages down of what the likelihood is that your DNA is randomly just found in nature. And so Texas, I found it ironic that the state where we're known for putting, especially in the county here, where we're known for putting more people on death row, we're actually taking this very seriously. And I think it's a great step for our state, for our leaders, that we're actually looking at this stuff and trying to say, all right, there's a new system in place, and we need to ensure and go back and make sure that the old cases were tried fairly. Now that we've got this new standard. So I think it's a good thing, guys. I mean, I don't know where the science will lead us, how it'll affect new cases, but I'm optimistic about where this is heading right now.
Well, I believe the science will affect new cases monumentally. Because when you talk about mixed use, to make it simpler, you're talking about, let's say, a knife that has my DNA and your DNA.
Right.
And so previously, an expert would say, hey, there is a 1 in 5 billion chance that this knife can have both Damon's DNA and Jimmy's DNA. Therefore, Damon must be the guy. He's the victim and Jimmy's the killer, right? And that was science, and it was accepted, and it was good. And then we come back later and say, oh, wait a minute, it wasn't really 1 in 5 billion. It's more like 1 in 2,000. You know, the mixed use, so the one DNA, one blood sample with different DNAs on it, it can be interpreted a lot of ways. And so now all of a sudden what was a 99% certainty is really more like a 10% or 15% certainty. That changes everything moving forward. It makes DNA a little more less valuable and makes it more representative of where the science is. True. Now, when you talk about Texas leading the way, it's one, because we lead the way in convictions.
Exactly.
So we have the most exonerations to go through. And two, Bob Wyckoff, who is a part of the appellate division at my office, the public defender's office, is actually one of the leaders of the DNA forefront. And that's why a lot's coming this way because, hey, he's one of the biggest guys out there. And so a lot of resources are being poured through my office, through Bob Wyckoff to lead that charge. And so it's kind of lucky, kind of unlucky, but it is still good.
I mean, I guess the one of the issues I see with this is now we've got these new standards, we've got these calculations, and the question I have is, well, how do we really know that any of this is accurate? Here we've been going along for so many years with DNA being the be-all, end-all of scientific forensic evidence, and we've got our percentages, this is our standard, and now all of a sudden they say, well, looks like we were wrong.
Trinidad, let me dovetail on what Jimmy just said, when he just posed. When we can't trust that science. So before this touch on this phone, it's 1 in a million chance that it's somebody else other than me. But now this DNA on this phone with this touch, it's 1 in 39. How does that affect the way you argue to a jury when DNA is presented in the case?
Well, I mean, you have to present, for me, I'm relatively new to this aspect of the legal world. So I've been a juror for a very long time. So to explain that, we had last year we had a sexual assault and it was life on the line. So we found a scientist, a doctor that came down and explained to us. The accusation was horrible, and this individual was locked up for 3 years and 3 months, and he said, I'm not going to take anything that they give me. So we had to find an individual that was open to new sciences, to unfold new things for the jury, and that in of itself helped us as the firm to get a not guilty. So I guess to answer your question is that, we have to find somebody that isn't going to talk to the jurors with the scientific legalese, but to tell them this is what's happening. This is a new thing that's happening. This is something, that we're opening up the door, and that in of itself will help defense attorneys, present the story that they need to present to get the results that they need to get. So,
Ike, do you think this causes confusion to the jury, or do you think it creates some reasonable doubt in the case?
Sometimes confusion is reasonable doubt, so I think it helps us a lot, because when you have established science that's been here for decades that we didn't refute, and then now all of a sudden they're coming back saying, oh, we were wrong, it's new science, I think it helps the defense world, all of us, out tremendously, because it lets us know that even though today they're saying it's 1 out of 2,000, tomorrow it could be 1 out of 10, so that you have to put the benefit of the doubt with my client. So I like it. I like that we have this new science, because I think it helps us a lot.
Damon, in the PD's office, you just mentioned Bob Wyckoff is actually reviewing cases, or what are some things that the public defender's office is doing now to address some of these issues?
Well, Bob Wyckoff, who used to be, basically Bob Wyckoff now will be in charge of post-conviction review of the DNA cases throughout Texas. He will be the guy in charge of that. Now, he will not do them all by himself, because in Harris County alone, there are about 24,000 cases to review, and no one man can handle that. So he will set up training and go throughout the state and kind of help get other people involved. But that is now Bob's job. And he's going to be the guy in charge of that. And in Texas, you really don't want any other person, in my opinion, on that, because he is the guy on the forefront. With the DNA, I think DNA today is, or has been in the past, looked at in the way other science in the past has been looked at. At the time, it was it. Like if the results said this, the guy is guilty, and therefore we followed it. And then 30 years later, we're like, well, how could we have ever followed that science? That was junk science. And we move forward into more specific and more concrete. And I'm not opposed to DNA, because DNA exonerates people as well. So I'm not opposed to it at all. But I think it is good that we're getting the truth about the science behind it, and that will push it forward to make it more absolute and to help us create a more absolute system. But like Ike said, which I could not agree with more, it does create presumptions. What used to be 1 in 5 billion is now 1 in 39, 1 in 200. And so you have to, as the DA, they have to have and present a more complete case. that consists of more than just DNA guilty. It has to be a more complete case, a more thorough investigation, maybe more witnesses or whatever. And each one together helps ensure a fair trial for us all.
Well, but didn't this go back to the age-old problem that we debated when you were co-hosting this show with me, Damon, and that is that the courts need to do a better job of being a gatekeeper on this stuff. I mean, we got science. You know, and I say it kind of tongue-in-cheek. I mean, look, there's a lot of good things that come out of science. You know, scientists do a great work in talking to us about a lot of things, and we've explored and made a lot of discoveries about stuff, but it's not perfect. And for years, we've thought that DNA, or at least we've been told, DNA is the be-all, end-all of this, and it's infallible, so to speak. And then you see stuff like this, and it changes. Well, our calculations were actually wrong. And I'm not faulting them. I'm not saying that that's their fault, because science is it's an evolution of things. I mean, ironic that you would say science and evolution in the same word, because those two don't really mix. But the fact is that science is changing. As you get different people in the field, as you get new eyes, new minds to look at things, things start to change. You make new discoveries, and you go back and you look at old things and you say, well, maybe we weren't quite right about that. You know, for years they thought the earth was flat. And then they said, well, nope, it's round. That's science.
Not if he has BLD.
Right, I think there's
Okay.
a new guy out there.
Yeah, okay. I know, I understand. But my point is that this goes back to the fact that courts need to do a better job as a gatekeeper on this thing. Because if they did their job from the beginning, we wouldn't have to be going back and reviewing all these cases, right?
Right.
You know,
And then to piggyback on that, what you're asking for is judges to be fair, to do their job as judges, to be impartial and play the game fair, calls balls, strikes, and not side with the one party. I mean, and that doesn't tend to happen, but you're 100% correct. If they were better gatekeepers, and if they allowed for defense to have the ability to present a proper defense and not hamstrung with whatever we're given, then we would have a better pursuit of justice.
And I'm curious about that, because you've been at the PD's office now for over
5 months now.
Yeah, I mean, so I want to know from your perspective what you've seen since you've been there, in your ability to get experts, to have the appropriate funds to go out and get an expert to fight cases like this.
It is a night and day difference. You know, we at the public defender's office, we have access to funds and experts that we can use. The process of getting them is easier for me. You know, and when I was a private practice and I did a lot of appointed cases, I had to go to the judge and ask the judge for money. And if they said no, they said no. And if they said yes, they said yes with a condition of a fraction of what I needed. You know, but the money came from them. And so my ability to get an expert and to present the proper defense I wanted to present in some ways came from them, because my client who's homeless can't afford a $5,000 expert. But with the public defender's office and through the grants we have received, not just from the county, but from other defense-oriented entities, we can provide experts and a better defense for our clients. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, form saying non-PD attorneys can't do the same thing. They absolutely can. But just for me, it has been easier and for me to be a better defense attorney.
Do the non-PD lawyers, your everyday court-appointed lawyers, can they have access to the PD's experts and their expert grants?
I mean, that I don't know. I mean, that's above my pay grade, so I'd have to say no.
I thought your pay grade was pretty high.
that's right. Yeah,
I thought that's why you left here.
Yeah,
And
then
Come on, man.
Then you leave the show, and then you do everything else.
That's true.
So, okay, let me pull this to the panel, though. In all seriousness, the articles praise the Harris County District Attorney's Office for leading the charge on this kind of thing. Okay, and I got a big problem with that, because I have a real big issue with, now we're going to praise the District Attorney's Office for trying to right all of these wrongs that they've already done. You have to realize there was something like 500 exonerations or something, and 400 of them came from Harris County, something like that. You can read the articles online, on our blog and on our website. Is it truly the district attorneys that are championing this exoneration, or is it the defense bar, or what really is it? And do they deserve all the credit that they're getting?
I mean, I don't think. Look, I don't think anybody deserves credit. You want my honest opinion? I don't think anybody deserves credit for it. I don't think the defense bar deserves credit for it. I don't think the prosecutors deserve credit for it. I don't think the judges deserve credit for it. I don't think the legislature or anybody. Here's why, okay? Because it shouldn't happen in the first place. If everybody did their job, the defense bar, the prosecutors, the judges, if everybody did their job, we wouldn't have, we'll move into it now. We wouldn't have the record number of exonerations in 2015 that we had. Because in order to get to a record number of exonerations, that means you had all these cases that were wrongful convictions. So when they say Texas leads the nation in, exonerations, well, that's because we led the nation in wrongful convictions. So, you can put whatever spin on it you want, but the fact is we had all those wrongful convictions. So I think across the board, guys, it's a failure by the entire system, defense attorneys included.
Jimmy, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. And the reason I would say that is you can't ask for a just verdict and to say we have a fair system when one side has so much and the other has so little. I mean, you're asking, you remember the movie with Michael Jordan? He was a cartoon character.
Space Jam.
Space Jam. So it's like all these all-star NBA players playing against like fifth graders, and it's not the same. And that's one of the reasons why when we watch like really Dick DeGuerin and Rusty Hart, and they get these amazing verdicts for their clients, because their clients can afford to level the playing field, But when we can't afford to level the playing field, when you're always, when the state has so much and you just have the ability to make a good argument and nothing behind it, no substance behind it, I mean, it's not fair. I agree with you, though, that nobody deserves credit for correcting a failure in that sense. But I don't think that, I think the state, if there were anyone to blame, JV, it would be on the state. And I think it's disingenuous for them to say we lead post-conviction writs and better, because what they don't say is they're not doing anything to teach their prosecutors now to not do this. So they might be, Harris County itself is leading post-conviction rates because it needs to. We have the highest one. But the DA's office is not making any strides internally to stop any more failures of false convictions and that kind of stuff. They're not doing anything proactive, and really they're still kind of going with the same story they've been going.
We got a phone call coming in a little early ahead of the 8:30 hour, but let's jump on and take it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to bounce off what I think was is it Damon? What Damon was saying?
Yeah.
That isn't it up to the judges to level the playing field and provide funds for the defense if they don't have those available to match the state? So it's not so much the state or the prosecutors as much as it's the judges who should be leveling this playing field and should be providing the same kind of funds to the defense when they're indigent that, we don't have from the public defender's office and the state has, right?
That's a great point.
I mean, you're correct. The judges are the gatekeepers, like you said, Jimmy.
Well, so Joanne Music, our president of HCCLA, of course, the organization that sponsors this great show, she wrote a very, very extended blog piece, almost kind of like a mini law review. Yeah, you did, Joanne. So it's chock full of great information. And, if you read the actual breakdown of the cases, and I hear what you're saying about, the monetary differences in being able to afford experts and everything else being a factor. But here's why I say that the defense bar is somewhat to blame for this, because a lot of these cases, there were 65 exonerations dealing with guilty pleas. Okay? I mean, and we all know, we've sat here and talked about it, about the plea mill and the racket, but we've all seen it, that a bunch of lawyers just line up, don't do any investigation on their client's case. So the fact is that even if they had the funds available to them, it wouldn't matter, because these lawyers out there are never going to seek it out.
I want to chime in because I think it really starts at when the reasonable suspicion or the probable cause happens. I believe those lieutenants and those sergeants that are on duty need to evaluate what the officers that encounter the citizens of this great city, they need to see, hey, you know what, let's slow down. Let's do a proper investigation. I've seen time and time again in the last year, we had 19 trials, and the majority of the offense reports, I mean, they're half a page long. And when you're talking about a half page long ruining a person's life where they're forfeiting their are grabbing another mortgage, or their families are falling apart, that the officers need to be trained better. I mean, they are out there in the beat, and it's a tough beat. I understand that, but I believe the sergeants and lieutenants and the captains that are out there, they need to evaluate, what these officers or deputies are doing out there prior to calling the DAs. They're at night, and they're tired. They've been working all day. They hear a few facts of a case. Bam. Go. You know what? Let's go ahead and place them under arrest, and we'll deal with it later. I think if it starts from the very first initial contact, and you have those lieutenants and captains evaluating that particular, the probable cause, I think that'll stop a bunch of that. I mean, there's a lot of families that will get ruined because of that.
Well, to your point, I mean, the breakdown, it shows, 27 exonerations due to false confessions, which that's usually beat out of people by the police. Official misconduct, which could either be the police or the prosecutors, 65 exonerations there, 65 exonerations from guilty pleas, and then 75 exonerations where there was actually found to be no crime that was actually committed. So that's why I take the position that it's a systemic failure across the board, because you can't just level it on the judges, you can't just level it on the prosecutors. I just think it's across the board.
But you do have somebody more to blame than others. I think that the defense attorneys are the last stop. Because you do have some clients who, like Zamora said, they don't have any money. They might have to mortgage their house. They don't have the money for the expert. So they're like, hey, you know what, Ike? I want to take this plea because I want to time served. I want to get this year in jail versus the 5 years, whatever it may be. So I think that the DA and the police officers and even the judges have more of a way to stop these injustices before it gets to our desk.
And let's go back to the idea of the judges laying the playing field, where it's those individuals who are in custody who are more likely to take that time served, to take that deal, to plead guilty before the drugs come back, because they're not given a PR bond. It's a nonviolent offense. They have very little criminal history. It's that perfect individual that says, you know what, I got a family. I'm in jail for less than a gram, not of coke or amphetamines, but of marijuana. And I got work tomorrow. And you're telling me I can go home today, and in reality, it's really spice or that fake stuff. They're going to take that every single time. And you as the attorney, as the defense lawyer, you got to tell them, look, wait till that lab comes in. Just wait. And he looks at you with that face that says, are you crazy? You and I live in a different world. You and I are from different planets. Give me that time served. I'll deal with this stuff later. Yeah. And they take the time served and they move. When that person could have gotten a PR bond, he could have gotten, and he probably was screened for a PR bond, but couldn't provide 2 names and 2 numbers because he don't know 2 names and 2 numbers. I think there's a systemic failure. I do across the board. But I do think, going back on what Ike was saying, was that there are checks, that so many checks before the defense lawyer gets the case. And there's failures and all along the way. And at the end of the day, it's the client that makes that call. And who are we to say, you know what, lose your job, lose your house, and eventually, by the end of the month, you might be homeless. Just hold on. Let's wait till this drug panel comes back. You can't make that decision as a lawyer. You can advise and you can tell them don't, but ultimately it's their life.
Phone number is at the bottom of the screen, ladies and gentlemen, 713-807-1794. If you want to jump in on this conversation, you got any other thoughts about what we talked about earlier in the show, or even if you just have some random thoughts and want to talk with us, I'm open to that too. Give us a call. We've also got Twitter up, like I said. You can see it right there at the bottom of the screen, at HCCLA_TV. All right, guys. Big article this week in the Washington Post. This is the political season, and we've got a lot of debates going on. We got a lot of people running for office. We got.
Is that what that is right now?
Yeah, we just had Iowa and all these other good stuff. But the big story was about the lobbying power of these for-profit prisons. And with Trinidad on the panel tonight, you used to work in TDCJ.
Yes.
So I have a question. Did you ever work at one of these private for-profit centers.
No, I certainly did not. I watched a lot of my comrades that were great, I mean, just great managers of folks, because what you do inside of a penitentiary, and I've learned since I went to law school, you maintain care, custody, and control. It sounds like a possession of a controlled substance, of possession. And what we did, as far as maintaining those three things, is we bound together. There was a lot of loyalty, but there was also a lot of integrity. And as soon as the private prisons started blooming across the state, we lost a lot of good people. And a lot of people that didn't deserve or didn't have the criteria to get promoted started promoting through TDCJ. And we lost a lot of that. And we're now that I see it from this side, people, the plea mill I've heard on this particular show, the plea mill, and they go into these penitentiaries, and these people that are nonviolent, they for lack of a better term, they get turned out, and they become great criminals inside. And those people that we lost to the private prisons because there was more money, it became a capital enterprise. We got to feed them this particular thing, this many calories. That right there pulled away from TDCJ, and we started losing, the shortage of staff. But now, since, we were talking about it last night on one of our Facebook blogs, that because of the oil, how the oil situation is going down, now the people are coming back to TDCJ. But to answer your question, with the private, penitentiaries, it is very, very tough on what we're trying to do when people plead and when people are found guilty. The different, the Wyndham school districts, the different programs, because the private prison took that from the state, and it's.
These are private corporations.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, they've got people like Dick Cheney on their boards, some very prominent politicians, and these people are able to lobby to get favorable tax breaks, to get government contracts, and to house these people, and the old prison industrial complex. And the problem is, like what we saw in Pennsylvania, the system is ripe for corruption. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, there was a judge sentenced this week in Pennsylvania to 28 years because he was basically getting a kickback of over $1 million for each kid. It totaled $1 million, but he was getting a kickback every time he would sentence a kid to prison, a juvenile to prison.
To his friend's prison.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, to kind of tie both stories together, when you monetarize criminal justice, you create an incentive to punish people.
Exactly.
Right? And not to rehab them, not to stop crime. And you create an incentive to make crime. So using the Pennsylvania judge, for example, he was sentencing children to juvenile prison for crimes that had no business being sent to prison. And it was to the point to where even the prosecutors and the defense attorneys were like, well, what's going on here? Everybody thought this kid should get probation, slap on the wrist. Why is he going to prison for 2 years or whatever? What's going on? Money is what's going on. And when you monetarize criminal justice, you make it so to where people have nothing but the incentive, like I said, to punish people, much the same way bail bondsmen make money off people getting arrested. So when it's monetarized, so like JV said, we don't get PR bonds for people because bail bondsmen lobby to where they have to pay $500 or $5,000 or whatever $1,000 to get out of jail, to go to work, else whatever.
There's a couple things, to dovetail what you're saying, there's a couple things in life that should never be monetized. Criminal justice is one of them. Because when you have private prisons, you have shareholders. And so the goal of the prison is to house an individual the most efficient way possible. But that's not the goal of a prison. The prison it should rehab or punish or rehabilitate, provide programs so they can be functional members of society when they are released, at least to some degree.
Right.
But when you are looking at the bottom line and you are looking at the cheapest way or the most efficient way to house an individual in prison, so that way you can still make a profit to pay out to your shareholders, you are losing the whole point and the whole idea of what a prison should do. There's a couple, we already have private medicine, for example, where you're denying people things that they should have for profit. You're already having things like private schooling, where you're denying individuals with the proper education that they should have. And you're monetizing prisons too. Those are things that shouldn't have a dollar value on them, because the most efficient way to house an individual is not the best practice. And you're looking at shareholders and dividends and money versus what you're really supposed to be doing.
Let me tell you what this article made me think. And this article came, it was in the Washington Post. I don't remember the exact date it ran, but I think this may have been last year, and it was one of the subjects that we kind of touched on last year. But we reread this article, and I did, and it made me think, I should probably pull the campaign finance records of every judge that I appear in front of for sentencing. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Because these private prisons, they can donate. TDCJ doesn't donate.
No. They can donate a lot.
Huh?
And they can donate a lot.
And they can donate a lot. And, there's, unlike what you were talking about before with the bond situation, there is actually a law. The rules say a judge has to be able to consider the full range of punishment available to them, which in most cases includes probation. And I don't know. I mean, I haven't researched it yet. Somebody smarter than me can certainly figure it out and do the research in the memo, probably quicker than I can too. But it seems to me like that probably be a pretty good grounds to recuse a judge in a sentencing issue. What say you?
I would agree. I think that not only do you have the issue of the prisons being able to donate to judges, but I think you have the issue where you have public money being given to private entities under the allegation or under the guise that the private entities can do it more efficiently. But they could do it more efficiently. How do you have them making millions of dollars and making all this money off the backs of taxpayers? I think it's wrong. I think it should be stopped. And the thing about it is that you see this happen in other sectors of life. When you have Medicare, Medicaid, you have pharmacists or home health care agencies overbilling the government. That's what's going on with these private prisons. They take these citizens, and instead of rehabilitating them, they incarcerate them for longer periods of time because they get more money. And I think that we just see that happen more and more.
And what we see is these prisons who are not providing, these private prisons who are not providing adequate care, rehabilitation, or meeting their purposes, we see recidivism.
Which is the actual goal of it. If you are in private prison, you don't want people being rehabbed. Mm-hmm. You don't want them getting better because then they don't come back to prison. If you are in private prison, you make money when you have prisoners. And so recidivism is the key.
That should be a study.
Got another call coming in. Let's jump on the phone line. Take it. Hello, welcome to Reasonable Doubt.
I knew this guy, and he showed up for a small offense. It was like he was in a few days in jail in a wheelchair, and they took one look at him and basically, just got rid of the sentence because he was going to be too much trouble to take care of. And I wonder if prisoners become unprofitable, would that reduce the private prison incentive?
Great question. Thanks for the call. I mean, my opinion, I don't think as long as they're going to be doling out government contracts on them, that a prisoner is ever going to become unprofitable because they assign a dollar value to that prisoner.
But you know what we've seen here in Harris County, the largest insane asylum in the state or in the country, where
I think mental health
probably
the proper terminology, Julio, but
mental health facility on this side of
Arkham Asylum in Gotham,
But it's the taxpayers who are footing that bill.
Yeah,
it's all of us, all of your viewers, everybody here who's footing the bill for housing individuals with mental health issues and mental problems or health problems. And going back onto what Major Zamora or Trinidad said is, it comes down to the individuals on the street level. Should those people have ever been incarcerated in the first place for that criminal trespass, when that officer could have realized, or there could have been responsive teams at the forefront that say, hey, this guy has mental health issues, he's criminal trespass or some lower level offense. We should probably figure out a different place to put him other than the Harris County Jail.
But isn't that issue with society as a whole? I personally feel like criminals are lumped with almost veterans. You know, a lot of veterans don't get the care they need, and criminals don't get the care they need. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. When you go to the average citizen and say, hey, you know what, criminals are being treated unjustly, what do they say? They don't care.
Right,
they're criminals.
They're criminals.
So I think that's the issue, and they don't see that as actually in their best incentive to help these alleged criminals because it's their tax dollars. Harris County probably flushing millions of dollars down the drain every year in the largest mental health institution, and the average citizen does not know that.
Right.
But they will know that. I mean, I think if you look at where it's been the last 20 years, we have been tough on crime, right? We have all these 3 strikes you're out bills and these federal sentencing guidelines that are draconian and make no sense, and people doing 20 years for having a crack rock, and you have an assault charge. Oh, but you get an assault charge 40 years ago when you were a teenager, so now you're facing 25 years to life, and it doesn't make any sense. And I think taxpayers, no matter how they feel about justice or criminals, they care about their money and their wallet. And once they see that, man, we keep paying more and more for prisons and more for cops, and you keep telling me I'm still not safe, something has got to change here. So we are seeing in other countries, and I'm not saying it's better or worse, different approaches to criminal justice, and they're having various degrees of successes. And more importantly, I think once taxpayers get tired of doling out more and more money and seeing more and more prisons and more jails, and we need more and more cops, and you're still telling me I'm still not safe, they're going to demand a change.
RoboCop.
Okay.
Which one? Because there were several different versions, and only one of them was in the cop.
That one.
Like the Japanese one.
That's the bad one.
Yeah,
That's the one that shot everybody.
Now we're getting into the movie review segment of this show, ladies and gentlemen.
2 snaps and a twist.
That's right. Trinidad, from your perspective as a former correctional officer,
Yes, sir.
do you view a difference between the way an employee at a state-run facility treats prisoners and treats the job versus the way it's operated at these private prisons?
I really don't. I don't have that really have that knowledge, but I knew a lot of people that went to the private penitentiaries, and the policies and procedures that they had to follow. Of course, they were pointed at the bottom line. The different foods that they had to serve, and the different, programs that they had. With TDCJ, when I was there, we were focused on, and what they would tell us was rehabilitation or punishment. But now that in retrospect, now that I look at it from a fishbowl point of view, and now that I know the plea mill the way it is, I once was blind, but now I see. And for me, that's where my fight starts every morning. I'm trying to prevent that, because the majority of the people that I did have to prevent from getting outside those fences, mentally ill. Now that I see it, back then, I didn't care about the sentence. My job was to keep them inside that fence. Now, looking back, I wish, because I was the major at the Garza complex down in Beeville, where we took all the county offenders that were being sentenced to TDCJ, going through their files, and as soon as they came out, I had to classify them. One person would kill 3 people in a drunk driving accident, and they get 15, and this other individual, like what was said earlier, a crack rock, 20 years. It just was phenomenal to me that difference between the 2 cases. For me, I can't talk about what the private entities were and how they managed those particular convicts, but I knew how the change was happening in TDCJ. They were the good people were being paid more at the private facilities because, again, the bottom line, they were leaving, so these people were getting promoted that didn't know how to manage people. I mean, when I first got in there was building tenders being, they're being ousted, and so this vacuum came in with the gangs and things of that nature. But I mean, I really can't talk on the private entities. All I can do is on the state, and those 15 years that I went through there, I seen the change and how rehabilitation was no longer, very important to the system.
It's a very interesting and kind of sleazy and corrupt system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is.
Trinidad, if I may ask you, if you could change one thing in the prison system or a couple things, what are some things that come to mind?
I guess I would look at the mental illness. I mean, because the time, just from the very moment that you're taken into TDCJ, when I was there, they shaved your head and they just broke you down and put you in different pods. And there would be individuals that were taken advantage of, the very first night. We'd have to go in there, sexual assault investigation, I would have to talk to families as the family liaison, as a duty warden, 4 years down the line where an individual was shaven completely bald from head to toe, and talk to the families, a wife or children, to say, well, he came in as a man and now he is playing a different role, and that in of itself, that's a lifelong, for not just for the individual that was incarcerated, but for the families. For me, it would have to be to evaluate the mental illness part of the individuals that are sentenced to TDCJ time. So that aspect, there's only a handful. There was probably 3 or 4 at the Garza West unit that would evaluate an individual that would be sentenced to a 10-year, sentence, and that was it. They'd have about 15 minutes. They'd be, pencil whipped through, and they would be put out there in general population. So I believe that, to answer your question, would be the mental illness part of it. It's alive and well in TDCJ when I left it.
Since we're on mental illness, I got to switch topics. Super Bowl week, Johnny Manziel, in trouble again.
You say in trouble again, that implies he's sometimes.
Because we talked about it last time.
But
he's always.
he's never been actually charged with a crime. I think he might be charged with a crime this time.
Is he not? Do you think he's run out of 9 lives on this one?
Hey, Manziel's my man. I love Manziel. The thing about Manziel is that it's a young kid with money.
Manziel is your man?
Manziel's a young guy with money.
Oh my gosh.
Because look, Manziel comes to Houston all the time. My parents live in the Richmond area, so it's about 10 minutes from Sugar Land. When I was in law school, he always used to be at the bars in Sugar Land. And I'm telling you.
Now you're just name dropping.
No. The thing about Manziel is that Manziel never got taught that he's just a regular person. He's a celebrity. Well, he was a celebrity at 21.
Are you kidding me?
He's not a regular person.
Is he suffering from affluenza now?
Hey.
What
is he is. He might be. He might be.
Let's talk about that. Because this did happen in Fort Worth, of all places. But according to this latest police report that's come out, he's allegedly threatened to kill his girlfriend, forced her into a car, hit her, drag her. They sent out a frickin' police helicopter to search for him. Now, who else does that happen for?
Nobody.
No.
It's a scapegoat, man.
A scapegoat?
That's what it is.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh.
How many assault family members have you had with a helicopter?
0.
Exactly.
0.
Exactly.
But and technically you haven't had one either. He hasn't been charged yet. But he should be. Listen. Listen. We were talking about sports or the criminal part. Man,
well,
Lex as a quarterback.
That's probably because you ended up with him as your fantasy.
Pro quarterback. I did, and I paid for it.
So he was your man until he didn't get your points.
All my 4 quarterbacks got hurt, and who's left out there? Manziel and Matt Schaub. All right.
Okay.
So, but all seriousness aside, the guy has exhausted. I'm not for. I am for criminal justice. Yeah. If he gets arrested for what he's done, he gets arrested for what he's done. He has the ability and means to take care of himself, and he's had plenty of opportunities to learn from his decisions. You don't get to beat women over and over again and not pay for that. you don't get to do it one time and not pay for it. So if he is guilty of these charges and if the allegations are true, he needs to be brought to bear for them, just like everybody else.
So let me get this straight. They sent a helicopter to go look for him, but don't arrest him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, but anybody else on this planet, at least on this state, all it takes is a phone call to get arrested.
Red mark
No,
on
no
the face.
photos, no
Right,
prints,
yeah,
no nothing.
no photos, no nothing. So they send the chopper out for him, but they don't arrest him.
They got an autograph. That's what
He had a wig.
autograph
He had a wig
football.
on.
A worthless autograph.
He was in disguise. I mean,
So what do they say? They say he pulled her out or threatened to kill her, terroristic threat, class A. That's against a family member. Up to a year in jail, $4,000 fine. What's next?
Yeah, I mean, he says, I guess there was this whole back and forth about, they got into this fight about whether he was going to kill himself, and then he tells her to shut up or I'll kill you both. I mean, you read this offense report, and I tell you what, it's a 4-page offense report that's pretty detailed in terms of what happened. And
It's online.
wow.
it's online.
They released
You can go to the Chronicles website
The
and
offense report.
it's a redacted offense report. See right here.
It's online.
It's online.
That is an offense report.
That's
That is
egregious.
that is an offense report.
That's an official offense report.
As a defense attorney,
That's
that is prejudicial.
that is.
How do you
to his
defend against
defense.
something like that?
Yeah, they leaked it.
We had the one witness rule we talked about. Trinidad, how do you defend against that?
Just go for swing for the fences.
Hey, like, go ahead, right?
I mean, in this case, though, you read this, you got the police report out there already. I wrote last week in a blog post that the presumption of innocence really doesn't exist in this country.
Oh, it does not.
And it's especially true in high-profile cases. I mean, we're all sitting here talking, guy's guilty.
Right.
And we're defense lawyers.
And that reminds me, if I'm sure we've all watched the Making a Murderer Netflix special.
Yeah.
One of the most brilliant things that prosecutor did was go do a interview and completely outline the case and be very like detailed in what he did, and completely poison the jury pool, but finding him guilty. It's the exact same thing.
Well, I think it turned out that some of the jurors on that case knew the police or something, and so that was perfect.
Guilty from the get-go.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 30 seconds left. I want to go around the table. Super
Panthers.
Bowl weekend. You say Panthers?
Panthers.
Panthers.
We're gonna go ahead and boom.
You gonna
Panthers.
dab-
Go
dab-
Cam, go Cam, man. What's your pick?
I mean, I want to pick.
gosh.
I want to pick the Broncos, but I think.
Oh,
Panthers-
Hey,
before we finish, do
Can't
we know
retire
the bond on the Planned Parenthood? I called 50,000.
I don't know.
I thought it was 15.
Was it 15?
It was low.
No, it's 2,000.
Ah,
2,000. That's what it was.
Man.
It was
I
2,000.
thought it wasn't 50. I know.
No, it was 2,000 on the
I think we should all
felonies.
just
But anyway,
grab real quick.
that's all the time we got for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Please go check out our website, HCCLATV.com. You can catch up on all our past episodes, read our blog posts, especially read the one by Joanne Music this week. Follow us on Facebook, like us on Twitter. I guess I got that reversed. Actually, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. We'll be back next week, 8 p.m. Thank you to my guests, Damon Parrish, Ike Okorafor, Trinidad Zamora, and my co-host, Tulio Vela.
Shout out.
Shout out.
Give it.
Shout out.
No.
Good night, everybody.
Shout out, man. Shout out.